Hello and welcome back to Movie Talks with Michael. If you are unfamiliar, I'm Michael, hence the title, and the way Movie Talks works is I am joined every time with a new guest, and today my guest is Barry. Barry of Game Grumps. For those of you who are unfamiliar, he is the editor and also co-host of the Table Flip show that they have as well. Barry, thanks so much for joining.
Thanks for having me, Michael. I know.
Oh, it's such a delight. As is customary on the show, the guest gets to pick the movie that we watch, discuss. Yes. So, Alien.
Yes.
Let's movie talk on
Alien.
You picked
to talk about Alien. I want to talk about Alien.
First, we should just do a general plot summary.
Yeah. It starts with a crew of people. I don't know exactly what they did, but they're on some sort of mission.
They're on the ship Nostromo. They're all in stasis sleep.
Mm-hmm. Coming back to Earth from some successful excavation or whatever.
Right.
They're all like miners and
a distress signal is cues them to come out of the stasis sleep. Mm-hmm.
There's a distress beacon on a planet. They go down to the planet, check it out, and then stuff happens.
And then Alien.
Right.
So, I mean, that is the bare bones story breakdown. So upon rewatch of it, as you've seen it before, what was something that stood out to you?
Definitely the way that I guess Ridley Scott, the director, the way he treats the alien. Because when you're watching for the first time, you're not really sure where the alien is. I mean, you know what it is because, you know, the xenomorphs are such a part of pop culture now.
Right.
But you really, in the context of the film, you don't really know what's happening. It's changing shape, it's evolving, you don't really know what's happening.
Well, it's also really interesting is that for more than an hour's worth of the movie, you aren't seeing like a full xenomorph. You get a lot of like just meeting the crew, getting to like them.
Getting to learn each member and their own quirks and how they interact, and they give you a lot of context.
And then even before you get the xenomorph, you get a bunch of like, oh, these are things that the xenomorph has, like the acid, blood, and all these.
They sort of set up everything that happens when they're then fighting the big guy.
So at that point, you don't need all these like, oh, it does these things. It's very good setup for all of that.
Yeah. When it's finally unveiled as this giant creature, they show you a lot of it when you don't think you're looking at it.
Yeah.
If you're familiar with the movie and you know where he's going to jump out from or where he's hiding or whatever, he's just kind of hanging out a lot.
Yeah.
And there's like when the first guy is killed, the guy with the cigarette is like...
Yeah, Harry Dean Stanton. It's
whatever
like Cheney and Rainey.
Yeah, Cheney and Rainey. and like he's looking up and he's enjoying the water and he's looking for the cat. And you look up and you're just staring at the alien.
Right.
And if you haven't seen it before, you have no reason to suspect that it's up there. It's like, why the hell would it be up there? I mean, you still think at that point or maybe I think he's already picked up the skin. You know that it's not the tiny guy anymore.
Right.
But he's just, the giant alien is just sort of hanging out on a chain like, hello. And that is so ballsy of like a creature horror movie to be like, there's the guy.
Yeah.
Look at him for like 10 seconds, will you? And then it uncurls.
It also, it uncurls. It's very slow and deliberate. That a lot of the kills are
almost all the kills are off camera as well.
Yeah.
They'll like lunge towards it, and then maybe you see a shadow or like a close up of like the mouth in the mouth, going, brah, and then it cuts to someone else, and you're like, oh, that guy's dead.
Yeah.
It's not this like graphic like mutilation, people getting ripped apart. No. It's just like he's dead. That's all you need to know.
I mean,
he's not having a good time anymore.
It also might be a thing of just the technical restrictions of making a xenomorph or what have you. Like they couldn't. Which I always feel that with limitation comes more creativity of like, oh, hey, how do we deal with
I mean, clearly
things?
They were confident with the way the creature looked on camera. I mean,
100%.
By the end, again, when Ripley's on the little escape pod and the xenomorph is just like hanging out, like sleeping in this little like cubby hole, and it then comes out and is just like, I'm an alien, and she's like trying to figure out how she can kill it or whatever.
Right.
And it's just kind of standing there and walking around. Like, they give you a lot of time to look at it at the end there. So clearly, them not showing the alien during most of those kills and like showing bits and pieces of it, that was all deliberate. That wasn't like, we've made this shark for Jaws and we don't want to show it because it looks like crap. They knew this thing was badass and cool, and they wanted it to be this kind of mysterious silent killer.
There is this wonderful aesthetic to the whole film. Like I mean, the world, like the ship interior of Nostromo, the alien planet that they land on. I mean, H.R. Giger, who did the design of Alien and the various like alien terrain and even some of the interior of the ship. I mean, there's something that I also just love about like 60s/70s future.
Right. It's the used future, right? Isn't that the term for it?
I believe so.
Like Star Wars kind of was a big early success with that, where it's like it's not this perfectly clean white walled like 2001.
But I love like the weird like the old like dot matrixy sort of computer screen,
which they project onto the actors.
Yeah.
If there was actually a monitor there, it'd just be like kind of colored light.
Right.
But they're projecting actual like lines of stuff on their faces. They're like, we want this to be like, oh my god, these computer readouts and like all this stuff on their faces.
Yeah, the visuals in this film really, I mean, it's that paired with the music of this film doesn't play to the 70s sort of slasher, which was all synthy.
Right. There's no like, meow. There's none of that like really.
There's no drone. It's all. It actually goes more classical with it. There's violin strings, which kind of plays more into that Hitchcock sort of angle of like the staccato like psycho, but it plays more the melodious like.
And not only that, something else that I noticed more upon a second viewing is that almost the entire movie seems to have a heartbeat playing over it. Except for some scenes, like when they go into the little computer room with Mother, the computer,
and then
there's like a breathing kind of sound. There's like a quiet breathing, like in and out.
Yeah.
And so clearly there's metaphors and symbolism, but there's just this constant kind of heartbeat going throughout pretty much any time the alien is a threat, which is the second half of the movie.
Right.
There's just like this pulsing of the entire movie. You're just like, I don't want this to happen. This is bad, and it's really really neat.
It's also really cool. The way that the crew was set up, in that, unlike most horror films, it's all young, like relatively young 20-somethings. In this, it's all like middle-aged individuals.
Oh yeah,
like,
they set them up to not
people.
Be a like combat-ready group of people.
They were the everyman.
They get up from their cryosleep and they start smoking, and you know they all have like yellowed teeth from probably years of smoking and stuff, and they're like, "Yeah, we're just here to do a job." And
yeah, I mean that's one of the driving things that keeps them on is when like they're like, "Why do we have to answer this distress signal?" Ash is like, "Well, your contracts," and they're like, "Oh god damn it! Like I wish this weren't in our contract." And Ash is so interesting in the way that he's set up and presented, because most of his shots are mostly him isolated, as opposed to the other shots, which will usually show the rest of the crew on their own.
Interesting.
And there's one line earlier on where someone's like, "Listen to the man," and he just gives like a little nod. I mean, his character in general, being the science officer, he's able to get away with so much.
Oh yeah.
And he's specifically working to get the alien.
Yeah, and I mean, even to the point where the captain of the ship is dead and Ripley is going to Mother, and it's like, what's going on? It's like, only the science officer can see this. It's like, what?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That they just wrote it in right away. They were like, let's not trust anyone. It's just going to be this guy. And you'd assume that would raise more eyebrows, but I mean, he's a science officer, so that covers so much.
It was also interesting because, you know, oh my god, he's a robot, but they actually do a lot early on to make you think he's human. I mean, why would you think he's a robot?
Right.
But he does a lot of very, like, human kind of worrying and, like, oh, this is not right, and, like, oh, man, wringing his hands, and, like, he does a lot of very sort of natural human emotions, where, like, if they set him up from the start as, like, yes, we will do this, I'm the science officer, you're like, okay, this guy's a little
It's
off.
a complete shock. Like, when the head comes up, you're like, what?
Well, just when he starts, like, bleeding, like, white
and everything.
goop, and he's like, blah, blah, blah. Like, at one point during his, like, malfunction, he literally does the robot for like half a second. It's like, oh no. Like, I don't know, I just really enjoyed that. And then all of the spaghetti and marbles comes out of his body. And, and again, like, there's a lot of like really kind of cheesy special effects work, Like when they have the prosthetic head and they're like trying to set it up, and it's like very clearly this like rubber head, and they put it up, and then all of a sudden it cuts
snaps.
to like him being like, "Oh no, I'm just a head. Hello," and it's like some of that stuff's a little cheesy, and like especially going back and like looking at Prometheus, like that shit is unbelievable when they have whatever the robot's name was, David.
Yeah, when they have David's head,
carrying
it's just
him
around.
Also, spoilers for Prometheus.
Yeah, he loses his head.
Yeah, I mean it's a common thing in the alien movies for robots to be horribly mutilated and have white goop everywhere.
I mean, it just makes it allows them to get that PG-13 rating because it's like, oh, it's not blood, it's not guts.
Yeah,
it's just a robot.
White and spaghetti. So
then they're able to get away with so much more. I also just found, just in regards to the tech, the helmets when they're exploring. I loved the extra little details of the breathing little puffs. Like,
yeah, it's so cool.
To me, because that was something, again, I have not rewatched Prometheus recently, but I do not recall that being part of. And I feel like
it's kind of goofy looking.
It's
a little bit silly, but it makes them seem even less capable in that environment. It's like we're just like little breathing people. Like it makes them seem more vulnerable. In a way.
Exactly. It makes them so much more out of their element because you see like they probably can't manage on this planet. Like,
I mean, I also love just the fun trivia that I remember reading that set was built. You know, they built a big set, but then the actors walking around were children. So
I didn't know that.
Makes it seem that much bigger. And so when you rewatch it, and they're like kind of like awkwardly walking around like, oh no, I'm unsteady. It's like they're kids.
That's amazing. I had no idea that was a thing.
So that makes that scene a lot more fun when it's like they're not unsteady because they're weirded out. They're just children in like awkward suits. But also I want to mention with the egg pod thing, I love the effect of the force field like protecting them or monitoring them. Just being lasers through fog. Yeah. It's so simple and it doesn't require some like special post effects or whatever. It's just it's just magic fog, and they add sound effects to when he's like dipping his hand into it. It's so simple.
There's a simplicity to a lot of what they're doing that just it's present, so they get to respond to it, and it's very cool. Also, I found it very interesting. We don't get to like really know Ripley until like the point where they're like open the doors, but even then she's just being kind of the hard ass play by the rules person. You don't see her as... It does set up a
lot. I mean, it sets up this relationship between her and Ash, and what Ash's role is in all of this.
That's the first moment of friction that ultimately went like everything goes haywire.
There's very little from the start of the film to suggest that Ripley is the protagonist.
Exactly, which I love.
Yeah.
And that's something that so frequently now we see with movies like Scream, which I love, but you immediately know that Sydney's going to be our main character.
Sure.
Like, there's no questioning your mind, but this really does play the ensemble very well. So you're like, who's it going to be?
Right.
Like,
and then it makes you care more when it's like, no, that person's dying horribly.
Right.
And like we're talking about Alien, not Aliens, the sequel.
Right.
But that is something that I think is lost in the sequel, in that this is Ripley's story. It starts with her, it ends with her. It's very much like this is her having an adventure, whereas the first one is this. It feels like you're just watching shit happen. It's not like this is a crafted narrative. It's like we're just reacting to these things happening to us. It's a very
it's more
one step after the next.
It's an everyman's story versus this particular character story. Because like you can very easily translate yourself, because most of us are just like, yeah, we do have a 9 to 5, and for the people on Nostromo,
this is percentage. We'll talk about the bonuses.
Yeah. Oh, I gotta get paid and I gotta eat cereal from these weird prism.
Whatever, yeah.
I loved that. I don't know why I love it so much, but just the thought that in the future, like all foodstuffs is just like wonderful square.
It just do the thing. And I like how their dining room has the little birds that like dip into the things.
They're the little things that humanize the whole crew to make it also, I mean, it's just relatable immediately.
I mean, I just remember enjoying, when I was watching it recently, how the movie starts. Like one of the first shots of the ship is the dining room empty and clean with these little birds going bloop bloop, and then an hour and a half later you have a guy with his chest exploding on that same table, and you're like, how did we get here? So it's those kinds of things. Those seem really intentional. Like, we want you to remember this place.
So then the counter is going to really stand out that much more.
Yeah. As someone who's more critical, what are your problems with this movie? I'm curious.
Initially, upon watching it, I wasn't the biggest fan of it. I just was like, I think this is all beautiful, and I like, It's
Yeah.
it like I'm empathizing, but I found myself getting bored upon watching it again. I think knowing what it was going to be doing, I was more engaged from the outset.
That's a really good point, actually. Like your second viewing, you're expecting it to have this long build-up. When
Right.
you're watching it, you're just kind of like, all right, get to it already,
Right.
and you don't really appreciate the slow burn nature of it.
The other, I mean, the only minor like annoyance I have is the weird obsession with the cat.
Jones.
Like everybody is
Yeah.
like kind of paying an odd amount of attention to the cat. And as far as I know, the cat isn't serving any like crew purpose.
Right,
Like
you don't know. You don't
we
know.
don't know. But it's
I mean,
never,
he wasn't in a pod, so he was like running maintenance on
Right.
the ship while they were all asleep.
right.
So
We also have this thing where, I mean, it's not like Men in Black situation where the universe is hanging off its collar.
Yeah,
Like it's not that, but for some reason, it's like, nope, gotta get the
gotta
cat.
get the cat, and then she like kind of just like throwing the cat around and like
Yeah.
getting in the ship. It's like this would be easier without the cat.
Yeah, you would get a lot more done if you didn't have the cat on you.
And also, Jones is the source of, I think, almost all of the jump scares.
Well,
it's just like, what is this? Oh, it's a cat. Like,
Well, and that's the thing that for the initial like,
Yeah, like
kind
the-
of satiates that like, oh, where's the scariness? Where's the scariness? And it's
they actually do that a lot, if I remember correctly. Like, oh no, a jump scare. Oh, just kidding. That wasn't anything. And then the alien's like, bah, I was here the whole time. And you're like, no. It's like the actual alien parts aren't those sort of jump scares. There are times.
they do a double fake out,
Yeah.
kind of.
If anything, the face hugger has the most kind of jumpy, like, rah, I'm a little crab finger monster.
Yeah, that scene where they're like, where did it go, is a really fun one, especially when it's doing those like low pans on the floor and you aren't seeing all of their upper body and just like, oh, what am I
And the puppeteering on it is just so wonderful. It's like, blah, blah, blah. And it has like these little sound effects and stuff. Yeah, I mean, there is a fair amount that's cheesy and dated about it.
I find it endearing, strangely
It is
enough.
endearing, but I can easily see someone being like,
Oh,
they're
yeah.
using like really crappy green text monitors and like this is the future and like
Yeah.
why does everything have a VHS effect on it when it's like, oh, your feed is breaking up? Like,
Yeah, but
it's like that's the world that movie was made in.
if somebody can't disassociate when it was made,
Right.
and the vision that of like, this is that future, this is that imagined
It's
future.
I think it's very clearly a 70s future.
Yeah.
Where they're smoking in their ship and everything's kind of wet and greasy and melty and
But it works. I
it's
think,
awesome.
I think it really does work. I think it's a beautiful film, and it really is one of those movies that, you know, so frequently like a sci-fi film can enter that real cheese-tastic, oh, it didn't age well category. Coming back to this, I do always find myself very impressed with like the sets, the just everything about it. It doesn't feel like it's aging much.
it's also very well lit. It doesn't really play with a lot of those really cheap slasher tropes.
No, I think that's what makes it stand out as much as it does, and as much as it did, because it was doing so many unique things, contrary to slasher films, contrary to science fiction films. It's far more mature than most horror films. Just go for the cheaper sort of scare.
It's not about the scare.
It's not about this, and it's about like the larger, like, what is humanity escaping from?
Oh
I
yeah,
don't
you
know.
can get into plenty of like extrapolating out then what their conflict means for
Right.
a greater purpose and yeah, I don't know, but
Well, I appreciate everything you've had to say. I appreciate you coming on,
yeah, sure.
introduce, like just wanting to talk about Alien.
I had fun. I didn't eat any of my Raisinets though. I'm gonna eat some of my Raisinets.
Eat some now. Well, those were some of our thoughts on Alien. I'm sure you guys have plenty of thoughts on it, whether you love it or hate it.
What was Jones's role on the ship? I really want to know.
We are curious. Leave those in the comments. Around us now should probably be some associated links to various other things.
Where are they?
Perhaps something from Barry and Game Grumps.
Yeah, check out
perhaps,
Game Grumps.
Perhaps something from me.
Check out Belated Media. You're already there.
Who knows? But we'll see you on another, or I will at least see you on another movie talk. And Barry will just enjoy these Raisinets.
I will. Thank you. Oh,
How are they?
they taste like raisins, but covered in chocolate.
What a world we live in. What a world. I think we're good.